Hi there, come on in. I'm Fred Trost. This is a world record lake trout. But the guy who caught it right here, Norm Lesperance from Flint, is not a world record holder. Sorry about that, Norm. But he's going to tell us all about it in just a moment because it's Thursday night and time for Michigan Outdoors.
From the rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties, we'll look around again at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan.
Now this fish, let's clarify right off the bat, Norm, was not caught in Michigan.
No, it was caught at Northwest Territory, Great Bear Lake.
Way up near the Arctic Circle.
That is right.
That's where they catch a lot of those big lake trout. Well, let's hear the story on why this is a world record lake trout. How big?
50 pound, 8 ounces.
Boy, that's a big boy.
Yes, it
now,
is.
Why is that a world record and you're not a world record holder?
Well, because we caught it on 20-pound test line, and the day that we caught it, we said they were going to put it in the refrigerator, and I couldn't figure out where the refrigerator was. So when we got to the shoreline, he dug a hole in the rocks, and got to the ice and covered it back up with rocks. And about 30 minutes later, the plane came in, and they shipped the fish back to the lodge, but we stayed there for another day.
Anyway,
so that's why we didn't get a record fish.
And when it was all said and done, you looked in the record book and you said, hey, I got a bigger one than the world's record.
That's right.
What a story. Ned Fogel, come on in here from the Michigan DNR, from the Fisheries Division. Ned, how do fish like this that they catch in Northwest Territory stack up with our Michigan lake trout?
Well, this is a good example of the state record, which was taken in 1944, which was 53 pounds. But subsequent to that, we haven't had anything that large. Our modern, so-called modern record is 31 pounds taken in 1977.
Well, Norm, is that the lure that you caught the fish on?
Absolutely.
Ned, give us a comment here. Should more fishermen be using a lure like that in Michigan?
Well, that's a musky-sized lure. You could use them on our large lake trout and that, but generally it takes very large fish to take this size of a bait.
Boy, that's something. Do you catch the fish up there in the Northwest Territories right on the bottom?
Right on the bottom.
And this was what time of year?
It was the 3rd week of August.
You might as well give a little plug to the lodge there you caught it at.
Well, it's Great Bear Lake Trophy Lodge.
And probably booked up when fish like this are caught up.
You have to get your reservation in 1 year ahead of time.
Now, who taught you to fish?
Well, a fellow by the name of Don Verhane.
Oh, Don Verhane. Come on, Don. The fishing buddy here who says he has all the skill and you have all the luck.
Well, he may have a lot of skill, but I've got all the luck for sure.
Okay. Don, what do you have there? What kind of fish is that?
This is an Arctic char. Now, this fish wasn't caught in the Great Bear Lake. This is a fish that comes out of the Arctic Ocean and comes up the river to spawn. And we take a side trip by float plane and go up and catch these fish.
Ned, we don't have Arctic char in Michigan.
No, but we have several close relatives. The lake trout and the brook trout are very close relatives to the Arctic char.
Why don't we have Arctic char? Why don't you guys at the DNR introduce them for us?
Well, these are a fish of very cold water. This is a sea-run char, and they're found only on the northern slope into the Arctic waters. There are landlocked Arctic char, and they do get a little bit farther south, but not as far south as Michigan.
Well, you guys have quite a tale to tell. You know, I'd like to invite you down to Outdoorama, which is coming up here February 19th through the 28th, and we're going to have on Tuesday night, the 23rd, Master Angler Night. I know you guys caught this fish outside of Michigan, but you are Michigan anglers. You want to come down to Outdoorama, bring these fish, be on stage?
Be more than happy to go.
We'd love to.
Terrific. Ned, you're going to be there?
You bet.
Hey, it's going to be a good night, Master Angler Night down there. Congratulations, Norm.
Thank you very, very much.
In our hearts, you're the world record holder.
I know I am, but Don's not.
You'll hear more about that at Outdoorama. Glenn Dutterer, how you doing, Glenn?
Okay.
You bring us more critters on the show here. This obviously is a Baltimore Oriole.
A very lost Baltimore Oriole.
Well, I'll say they're supposed to be where? Florida?
Brazil.
This bird is supposed to have migrated to Brazil?
He should be in Brazil right now, perhaps getting ready in a month or two to come back to this point, but he should be in Brazil right now in the tropical forests of Central South America.
Why in the world would this bird want to migrate to Brazil? Why wouldn't it just stop off at Kentucky or Georgia or Florida Keys?
Well, we really don't know. His close relatives, the blackbirds, do just that, and of course the robin does. And the best that we can guess as scientists is that these birds developed in Central South America. This was their point of origin. And a few of them, like the Oriole, have learned to come north to take advantage of the tremendous amount of food and cover that's available in the north during the spring and summer.
Well, the obvious question is, why is this Oriole still here? Where did you get it?
Well, this Oriole was found at a bird feeder. It was coming to a bird feeder where, finches would come to eat seed, but since it's not a seed eater, it couldn't find anything to eat and succumbed to the cold weather and lack of food. And the person who was at the bird feeder picked it up and brought it in, revived it, and then it was given to us for care. And of course, you can see he just took a bite of some of the food that we have for him. And so we're holding him. I'll turn him over to a person who has a possession permit and is skilled in taking care of these birds. And I guess probably be released in May when his friends come back from South America.
Well, I know a little bit about the game laws, Glenn, and I happen to know that the person who brought you this Oriole was a violator.
That's right. These birds are protected. They're migratory. They're protected by federal and state law and international treaty. And although that was a humanitarian act, initially it was in violation of those laws. Songbirds are fully protected, and they may not be killed or taken into captivity. So he's here under special permit. And also you can see he's a wild bird. It doesn't make a very good caged bird at all, and return him to the wild as soon as possible.
Now, it is important. We always hear that you should keep feeding birds at your feeder. If, for example, you have a feeder out right now and some seed in the feeder, if you let that run out, are there birds that are actually, their lives are in danger by stopping feeding?
Well, yes, it can be, particularly if you're the only one in the area that are feeding birds. One, you've probably kept alive some birds that would have succumbed anyway, and a lot of your birds have become accustomed to coming to your feeder, and so if you would suddenly cease, particularly during severe weather like we're having right at the moment, it could result in a lot of birds dying at that time.
Well, there are some species of songbirds that would fly south that do hang around feeders because the food is there. What are those?
Well, like bluebirds, for example, if there are berry and fruit trees in the area where they can get some of that, they will stay in the area, as will robins. Some of the blue jays, for example, are migratory, but if there's a sufficient supply of food, they'll stay. And doves, particularly. Large numbers of doves stay in Michigan just because there's feeders.
But if they do get sick, what you've learned from Glenn Dutterer is that leave them alone. It is a violation of state and federal law.
Yes.
To have songbirds in captivity. But I'm sort of glad that person did bring it here for us so we can see the Baltimore Oriole, a member of the blackbird family.
Let's see if we can make him sound like a blackbird. Just a minute. Occasionally, you hear that chatter. That sounds much more like a red-winged blackbird than it does an oriole. So
Glenn,
he's definitely a member of the blackbird family.
You always bring us such interesting wildlife. Our wildlife friends here brought to us by Glenn Dutterer. Now let's go over to another friend of Michigan Outdoors that I haven't seen for a while. Wally Taber, the man with the $1 million smile. How you doing?
Hello, Fred. I'm just fine. Nice to be back with you.
A lot of our friends out here in Michigan Outdoors recognize your face. They've seen you for years and years in Michigan, touring with your adventure films.
You'd be amazed the number of third generations that are coming in now. We started 25 years ago here in Michigan. 25 years ago, and every year for 25 years we had Wally Taber safari shows here.
And now this month, throughout the remainder of February, you're going to be in a number of locations in Michigan. Why don't we put these up on the screen so our viewers can see where you're going to be and when. Let's go to some of this film you have and give us a little taste of the Wally Taber safari films for this year.
Well, there's lots of interest in archery and black powder, primitive weapons, so I went down to a ranch in Laredo in our film Witchery of Archery with a good friend of mine, Jim Doherty from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's the same ranch where I took my audience about 4 years ago on deer hunt. We went down there in the middle of the rutting season 4 years ago and rattled up big bucks like this. And I know people that came to the show just thrilled at seeing these huge bucks. These will weigh 250 to 350 pounds. We have a couple of them in the film that had 14 points on the sides.
You should have seen our big buck contest here on Michigan Outdoors.
I would love to have seen that.
It's coming up, by the way, at Outdoorama. We're going to have a big buck night there, and we're going to have some bucks that match some of those Texas
Yeah, but
ones.
you're not going to rattle them up like we do. So we just take a set of antlers and rock them together and make a little noise like a couple of bucks are beating their brains out over some does. And during the rutting season, deer just really break the brush down to get in.
They said those bucks have one thing on their mind during rutting season.
That's exactly right. And for about 2 weeks, right at the peak of the rutting season, one can accomplish this. And I made a total film down there. But this particular time, I went down there with a different thought in mind. We were going down there to do some archery. And we went down in the spring of the year when you see all the daisies out there that Jim's walking through. And we took our bows and arrows with us because it's the time of the year when there are a lot of little dumb bunnies laying around there scratching their ears. And it's also the time of the year when javelina are excellent hunting.
Now, javelina, of course, are a little pig.
Yeah, the wild pig, wild brush pig of Texas. It's a native pig all over South America and Central America, and in Texas and part of Arizona they come into. And we shot at the rabbits, but we tried not to hit the rabbits because we couldn't eat all the rabbits. There's just so many rabbits you can't believe it down in that Laredo area.
Is this the hunt where you were doing that long-range shooting at
Yeah,
the bunnies?
we shot at these at about 100 yards and not closer because we didn't want to kill a lot of rabbits. We shoot at
Kill a
100
lot
yards.
of rabbits at 100 yards.
Yeah.
That's
We'd still get a couple of rabbits every time.
for how many shots?
Every day? Oh, maybe 10, 15 shots. About every 10 or 15 shots we hit 100 yards.
Of course, you and Jim Doherty are experienced archers.
Well, our purpose down there, though, was to show the audience how you use a predator call. Same kind of predator call I used to call coyotes and bobcats. Sounds a little bit like this. Like a rabbit's guy's tail caught in a ringer. And you'd be amazed, even the deer, they just come flocking in there to see what's happening. Usually you get the does, and sometimes a good-sized buck, but the hawks come in, the owls come in, and coyotes and foxes, they're like the deer when you rattle them up. They just almost break the door down trying to get in. So we have a lot of fun calling critters with the predator call, but most people don't realize that you can call those beautiful javelina like that, and that's about a 40-pounder and about a 60 or 65-pounder. That's about the biggest they get. That's a very large one. And we find an area where we think javelina are laying up in a bush. We get in a good position, then blow on the whistle, and they come storming out. And usually when they come out, there's a lot of in-between brush, but Jim makes a beautiful shot on one here. You can stalk them like you stalk a deer, but you don't know exactly where they are, and while they don't see too well, they got a pretty keen sense of hearing and a good sense of smell, and you have to be very, very careful in stalking them. But the easiest way is just find a big matted brush where you think they might be lying up in the middle of the daytime, get yourself comfortable, and then blow on the predator call.
And that brings those wild pigs in?
It's amazing how they respond to it, and I suppose it sounds like a squealing pig to them. I don't know.
Oh, I never thought of that.
It sounds different to everything. Look, that javelina, and there's a beautiful shot. The arrow went through and through him, and Jim had a nice
way it's
javelina
done.
very first day.
We don't have anything like that up north here. How are javelina to eat?
They're excellent to eat. They really are. You often hear them say, oh, they're so tough, but that's when you shoot a great big old, anything is tough. If you shoot about a 40 or 50-pounder, they barbecue beautifully, and they're just like pork.
Well, these are the types of things you can learn, folks, at the Wally Taber Safari Series. You saw the dates and the locations, that fascinating things, the way things are done around the world and in other states. But let's take a minute right now. I want to hear a story. Love hearing about this. You were on Mort Neff's show, the old Michigan Outdoors, many
gosh.
times.
I helped Mort start that show almost. I was there probably the first or second year that he had the show.
And we're talking about doing a national version here of Michigan Outdoors to put out to the rest of the country called Outdoors USA. But you and Mort also tried doing a national show, didn't you?
You know, that's a funny story. It was a long time ago we did this. We had a pilot all made up. We had the sponsors who were ready to take it, but they had to make up their mind between two shows. That was the Mort Neff National Hunting Show or National Outdoor Show, or a show that never hit the air, and it was called Bonanza.
Bonanza. That has a familiar ring to it.
Wasn't that something?
Which one did they choose?
They decided on Bonanza, and it had the longest run, I guess, of any TV show in the air. But maybe if Mort and I had gotten on with our outdoor show, we might still be on.
Maybe. We coulda. Well, great, Wally. You've hit a bonanza here with your lecture series. I wish you the best of luck.
I thank you. It's always fun to get back into Michigan.
Well, thank you very much. This is the face to look for this month in Michigan Outdoors, Wally Taber. We know bow hunting is popular all over the country, down in Texas there with Wally Taber, and even here in Michigan. Tim Eater from Michigan United Conservation Clubs and Ray Rustum, you're down here to talk about something that is I guess, highly controversial in some circles, and that is the crossbow. What is the big deal about crossbows, Tim? Why don't you represent the pro crossbow point of view? Tell me, why are people all upset about this?
Well, there's a group of people that want to have a season to hunt with a crossbow. And there's probably a much larger group of people that think a crossbow is a poaching weapon, it's unsafe, it shouldn't be a legal hunting weapon.
Ray Rustum, why don't you take what is really the bow hunter's point of view, the people who use the recurve bows and the compound bows. Why are they so dead set against a crossbow season?
Probably one of the main reasons is that they feel it's a threat eventually to their hunting season, that with all the advent of these new weapons, especially crossbow, that sooner or later there's going to have to be some give and take on some of these seasons because of the deer that are going to be taken with all these weapons.
Well, of course, when the compound was introduced, this bow allowed a lot of hunters to be able to shoot a bow easier. In other words, the letdown, when you pull it back and the pulleys turn over, it's easier to hold back.
Definitely.
And this has got a lot more people into the sport because they say, hey, it's easier. So the bow hunters are saying, wow, a crossbow here. I mean, this has got to be easier yet. Pull the trigger.
Well, also, it's difficult when you say that a lot of the archers came in with the compound. At the same time, we also had a two-deer law that came into effect. And because those two came in within 1 or 2 years of each other, it's difficult to tell which one had more effect on the number of deer hunters which came in.
Now let's go to the pro crossbow point of view. Tim, you people, obviously, I won't say you people, but the point of view you're representing don't think that the crossbow is going to adversely affect bow hunting, or do you acknowledge that?
Well, no, we don't think, they don't think that. You know, who says that a crossbow is any less efficient a weapon to take a deer than a bow? It sounds kind of selfish. There's plenty of resource. A lot of deer are going to starve this winter. Why not utilize them?
Okay, well, maybe the question is, if you look at this weapon, it does have the elements of a bow, very much like a recurve bow, but it also looks amazingly like a gun. Now, some people would say the crossbow should be in with the guns. It's an arrow gun. And other people, I think maybe they want to use crossbows to get into the liberal regulations of the bow season. Right? Isn't that what you feel?
That's what the legislation right now is. The Crossbow Association has supported only going during the muzzleloading season, but the legislation that's being introduced right now is to put the crossbow in with the regular, the compound and the recurve bow season.
During the bow season. What do you think? What have you heard about the crossbow people? Would they concede to having a special season and being lumped in with, say, muzzleloaders?
Yeah, they would, and that's the MUCC position. The compromise would be to put it in with the muzzleloaders, a 10-day season. It's a shorter season, and any deer shot with a crossbow under this compromise would be tagged with a firearm deer tag. Thereby, the count would go down on the firearm tally rather than in the bow tally.
Well, we'll see what the bow hunters have to say about this, and the crossbow people at Archery Night, which we're going to have at Outdoorama Monday night, February 22nd. We'll have Alex Jetway and a representative of the Michigan Bow Hunters Association who will debate this. You fellows, of course, are just sort of representing the points of view. But that's going to be on Archery Night. What else are we going to have on Archery Night? Tom Jennings, the man who developed the compound bow, will be here to tell about that.
Right, and I think we're going to try and shoot a crossbow and a longbow and a compound and a recurve on stage to demonstrate how they work and how effective they are.
A good opportunity for you if you feel strongly about bows, if you feel this is an arrow gun or a crossbow or whatever you feel about archery, to come down on Archery Night. It's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
See you guys there.
Thanks, Fred.
Now let's get over to our mailbag. I'm sure this controversy will generate some letters, but Ed, we had Dr. Howard Tanner, director of the DNR, on a couple weeks ago. We get any mail on that?
Sure did, and I was surprised, and I think you were too, that most of the mail we got was positive. A lot of media has had some critical comments to make about Dr. Tanner, but our mail didn't represent that, like this one from Lansing. The DNR is taking a bum rap. This agency has done a remarkable job in stopping the gross pollution of our state's air, water, and land by industry. We should all get behind Dr. Tanner and the DNR and show them our thanks for a job well done.
And from Bay City. I remember how it was in the 1940s and 1950s. Game and fish were on the decline. Rivers, lakes, and streams were polluted. The air was dirty. Under the leadership of Dr. Tanner and Ralph McMullen before him, things were turned around. We have the most outstanding freshwater fishery in the world with the Great Lakes salmon. Deer hunting is better than ever. I've hunted since 1937. There is public access to hunt farmlands. Factories have been fined millions of dollars for pollution and have cleaned up their act. Sportsmen should support the DNR strongly since the DNR has done so much for us.
From Flint, during Dr. Tanner's tenure, we have had salmon brought to the Great Lakes, royalties from oil leases, a larger deer herd, better state parks, cleanup of toxic waste dumps, cleaner air and water, etc. Maybe we need more B-, C+ grade administrators who can perform like this instead of being professional bureaucrats.
From Diamonddale, another support letter. We in Michigan are fortunate to have the finest resource management and environmental protection agency in the nation looking over the precious natural resources of Michigan. The DNR is recognized by the vast majority of the citizenry as a great public service agency. Critics of the agency have no basis for their complaints.
But Dr. Tanner did receive some complaints from Newberry. To say the DNR has its fingers in too many pies is an understatement. Trail maintenance, environmental protection, poor management practices, the state fairgrounds, the list goes on and on. All of the above-mentioned items detract from the original purpose of the DNR. That is, the protection and upholding of game and fish laws and intelligent game and fish management. I truly believe that now is the time for an independent fish and game department, financed solely with license fees with no interference from that ever-growing and now bloated bureaucracy, the DNR. Nearly every western state has a separate fish and game department, and they appear to do a heck of a good job.
Well, that's our letters, and of course, Ed, we here at Michigan Outdoors are highly involved in Outdoorama, and Dr. Tanner will be down there on Friday night, which is Michigan Outdoors Night.
I'll be there.
And Dr. Tanner will talk with the public, have sort of a press conference to answer questions, criticisms about the DNR. Now we're going to go over to a new part of our Michigan Outdoors cabin, brand spanking new. We've been waiting for this for the past 15 weeks. This is our kitchen. We've been doing recipes on film, which were, maybe a couple years old, but now we can do them right here in the kitchen. You're going to want to bring a pencil and a paper each week. We're going to do things like, learn about knives. There are a lot of cleavers and things that might be a little big for the job. There are things like skinning knives and boning knives and filleting knives. We're going to have experts talking about this. We're going to be using these here in the kitchen on different types of fish and game. Here's one of my favorite knives right here for chopping. I'll just tell you for a second right here, a lot of people try to chop onions and lettuce and things with maybe a paring knife like that. But the trouble is, you can't get down and chop right against the cutting board, but you can with a knife like this. I highly recommend a chopping knife. We'll be using a lot of this on Michigan Outdoors. And one of my favorite harangues is keeping a knife sharp. You got to do this. You can use a carborundum stone like this and sharpen it every now and then. It makes a lot of difference whether you're slicing tomatoes or cutting up pheasant or whatever. A handy little item, if you don't like to go through that with a stone, is to get one of these little rollers. And you can sharpen the knife on both sides, a couple strokes like that, and then a steel will put a fine edge on it. Well, we're going to learn all about this using knives, recipes. Bring your pencil and a piece of paper on Michigan Outdoors, and we'll show you lots of good things to cook, fish and game recipes. Right now, you're going to want to take a pencil and a piece of paper, maybe jot down some places where you can catch some trophy fish from our trophy report. The big fish get all the attention, so let's start with a whopper. Takes two hands to handle this whopper for sure. 35.5 pounds of Michigan Chinook salmon. R.J. Campbell from Grand Rapids caught it off Leelanau County last August. He was trolling with a Northport nailer, one of the most popular salmon lures of 1981. The Leelanau area and Platte Bay are favorite hot spots for Great Lakes brown trout, but here's one that went after a rebel lure that Ken Fox from Port Huron was casting in the St. Clair River. Brown trout are wary fish. Light line is often needed. In this case, 10-pound test caught a 20-pound, 11-ounce trophy. That was May 15th of last year, and spring fishing isn't that far away. Now, next to a Chinook or a Lunker Brown, a bluegill doesn't look very big, but this one's a trophy, a little over a pound. Not too long for its weight, just 9.5 inches, but Mrs. Velda Wilk from St. Joe caught it the classic pan fishing style, still fishing with a redworm in the evening in Round Lake, Van Buren County. Keep in mind, it was caught at the end of July, probably down deep. That's where those trophy bull bluegills like to stay during the heat of the summer. Now, last year on Valentine's Day, Tom Washabaugh from Bay City had something better than a box of chocolates for his sweetheart, a 10-pound, 7-ounce walleye. I don't know what she had to say about this, but if you'd like to try the same this Valentine's Day, head for Houghton County in the UP, Chassell Bay, and fish with 8-inch suckers. Now, if your Valentine lets you fish on February 14th, I'd send you a dozen roses and a box of candy and marry that girl for sure. And now our master angler of the week has got to be Jeremy Harvey. The perch he caught still fishing with wigglers up in Kate's Bay off Delta County is trophy enough, nearly 2 pounds. And that was 1 year ago last weekend. But Jeremy, so far, is our youngest master angler of the week. He's only 5 years old. And that's our trophy report for this week. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
Funding for the preceding program was made possible in part by a grant from Farm Bureau Insurance Group and its agents throughout Michigan.
Rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. Sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.